Something happened around 2012. It began to show up with weirdness on campus in 2014. That led me and Greg Lukian up to write the Coddling the American Mind article. We tried to figure out what caused this weird new morality, these terrible ideas. We thought maybe social media has something to do with it, but we didn't know in 2015. Then we wrote our book, published in 2018, and now we had a little more evidence, but still it wasn't crystal clear in the scientific literature. And even today, it's not crystal clear when we look at the published research. But when we look all around us, you talk to the teachers, you talk to the psychologists, you talk to the parents, you talk to members of Gen Z, nobody defends this phone-based childhood. Everybody sees the problems. If you plot out the trend lines for depression and anxiety, self-harm and suicide, they're relatively flat until around 2010. And then all over the English-speaking world, they start shooting up around 2012 plus or minus a year. Rates of suicide are at peak levels across the Anglosphere, but only for girls. What we're seeing is a very sharp, sudden change in girls' mental health all around the Anglosphere and the Nordic countries. It's the same thing. It's in those countries where there was a lot of independence and young people were not deeply rooted in communities, in religious communities, and in families. There's a lot of individualism. In those countries, when everything changed around 2012, all the kids got smartphones, or the girls all went on Instagram. It's right around then that in the Anglo and Nordic countries, the girls especially get washed away. And you cannot grow up in networks, you have to grow up in communities. It's especially, it's not just girls, it's girls on the left, and it's secular conservatives. So if you're if you're a kid who's a religious conservative, on average, your mental health is not really much worse than it was 10 years ago. But if you're a secular liberal girl, you probably, literally, like more than half say, I have been told that I have a mental health problem. If the next generation has such severe levels of anxiety and fragility and has so little experience collaborating with people who think differently than them, for all the talk about diversity, many of them can't handle working with someone who voted the other way. So if we just focus on social media, it's liberals use it more than conservatives, and liberal girls use it the most. So Jean Twenge says it might just be that the liberal girls spend so many hours a day on social media, and it's incredibly bad for your mental health, whereas conservative religious kids don't. But I think it's a lot more than that. And what I've learned while writing the book, I began by focusing on social media, but I now see that it's not just social media. It's what I've been calling the phone-based childhood. So for all of human history, for millions of years, all mammals play. Mammal childhood is about building up your brain, and you do that through play. Anyone who's had a puppy knows it's all about play. We had play-based childhoods up until around 2010. I've seen data in Britain, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like 60% of British kids in 2009, 2010, 60% of them used to go over to a friend's house sometimes each week. And then by 2015, that had dropped to something like 20%. I may be wrong on the numbers, but the thing is, kids used to actually see each other in person. And once they all got phones and loaded with social media for the girls, it's video games for the boys, childhood stops being play-based, which is what a mammal brain needs to wire up properly. It stops being play-based, it becomes phone-based, where phone includes video game consoles, all the stuff that makes your social interactions virtual, often asynchronous, disembodied, transitory. So it's a complete, what I'm calling it, the great rewiring of childhood. It happened between 2010 and 2015. It hit the US, Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand exactly the same way. New Zealand's a little bit later, but the US, UK, Canada are exactly in lockstep about what happened to our kids' mental health.